Emma Parker never planned for her life to feel so quiet, but that was the reality she woke up to most mornings. After her long relationship ended 6 months earlier, she tried to rebuild a routine, something steady, predictable, something that kept her from thinking too much. That routine always brought her to the same little lakeside cafe in northern Michigan. It was the one place where she felt calm, safe, and almost invisible in a good way. She would pick a corner seat near the tall window, open her laptop, and pretend to work while the world outside moved at its own slow pace. The cafe had warm lights, comfortable chairs, and a soft smell of roasted coffee beans that made her feel like she belonged even when she didn't talk to anyone. She liked the peacefulness of it. Or maybe she needed it, but everything began to shift the morning. She realized someone had been watching her, not in a heavy or threatening way. In a gentle, curious way that stirred something in her chest she hadn't felt in years. His name, she would later learn, was Daniel Hayes. He came in around the same time every day. Usually when the sunlight was still soft and the lake outside looked like glass. He always dressed in simple clothes, jeans, and a dark jacket, with his hair slightly messy like he had just driven with the windows down. He walked with quiet confidence, not trying to draw attention. He usually took a seat toward the back where the cafe was calmest. But his eyes, they always drifted toward her. It wasn't the kind of stare that made her uncomfortable. It was subtle, thoughtful, almost like he was observing a piece of art he admired but didn't want to disturb. The first time she noticed it, she pretended she didn't. She looked at her screen, fixed her hair, tapped on her keyboard even though she wasn't typing anything meaningful. She had spent so long feeling unseen that she didn't know what to do with the attention. Still, after that day she started noticing more. Every morning, he would walk in, order the same black coffee, choose his seat, and settle in with a newspaper or a notebook. And every now and then, he would look up Paul ways at her. Not in a bold way, not in an expectant way. Just gently, as if her presence gave his morning a purpose he couldn't explain. Emma wondered why. She wasn't glamorous or loud or attention. She was simply a woman trying to restart her life. She wasn't used to being someone strangers looked at. She wasn't used to someone noticing her at all. But Daniel did. She felt it in the air between them, quiet, warm, unexpected. Weeks passed, and the pattern didn't change. If anything, the glances grew more frequent. And slowly, Emma began watching him too. She noticed the little things, how he touched the rim of his cup when he was thinking, how he smiled to himself when he read something interesting, how he never rushed through anything, not even drinking his coffee. He seemed like someone who lived life slower than most people do, someone who paid attention, someone who cared about the small details that others ignored. One rainy morning, when the cafe was almost empty and the world outside looked gray and wet, Daniel's gaze met hers by accident. For the first time, she didn't look away right away. His eyes softened, and for a brief second, they held something real. Something honest. Emma felt her heart skip, like it remembered. Something it had forgotten years ago. But embarrassment rushed in next. She quickly looked down at her laptop, trying to hide the sudden warmth in her cheeks. She reached for her coffee cup with shaky hands, pretending she didn't care. Pretending she wasn't affected by the look of a man she didn't even know. Except she did care. More than she wanted to admit. A minute later, she felt movement in front of her table. She looked up, and there he was, Daniel, standing a few steps away, looking both nervous and composed at the same time. "Sorry," he said, his voice gentle and calm. "I hope I didn't make you uncomfortable." Emma's heart thudded. She wasn't expecting him to talk to her. She wasn't expecting the moment she had wondered about for weeks. "You didn't," she said quickly. "I just wasn't expecting anyone to walk over." He smiled slightly, the kind of smile that made his eyes soften. "I noticed. But I just wanted to say, sometimes I look at people when I'm thinking, and you're in my line of sight." Emma almost laughed at how careful and polite he sounded. "That's a very nice way of saying you stare at me." A small, embarrassed laugh escaped him. "I guess it is." The tension melted for a moment, replaced by something lighter, warmer. He nodded at her table. You always look like you're working on something important." "Not really," she admitted. "Mostly just trying to look productive," Lee said, tilting his head from my seat. "You look like someone with a story." She didn't know why, but his words touched something deep in her. Something she kept hidden. Something she never expected a stranger to notice. Before she could respond, a customer called his name at the counter. He gave her a soft nod and stepped away, leaving her with a heart beating faster than it had in months. From that day forward, their mornings changed. Sometimes they talked for a few minutes about books, about the weather, about how neither of them liked crowded places. Other days they simply exchanged smiles. And sometimes when they didn't talk at all, the quiet connection between them felt even stronger. Emma found herself arriving at the cafe a little earlier, brushing her hair a little more carefully, choosing a seat where she knew he could find her easier. She didn't want to admit she was looking forward to seeing him. She didn't want to assume anything, but her heart knew. It knew before her mind caught up. Daniel, in his calm, steady way, grew more open too. His glances became less accidental. His smiles became more certain. He seemed to relax around her as if her presence made the world feel a bit easier for him to handle. One morning, however, everything changed. Emma sat at her usual table, looking toward the entrance every few minutes. She kept telling herself she wasn't waiting for him, wasn't expecting him. But after 30 minutes passed, then an hour. She couldn't ignore the sinking feeling in her stomach. Daniel didn't come. She tried focusing on her work. She tried reading. She even ordered a second coffee just to keep herself busy. But a strange emptiness settled in her chest. She hadn't realized how much she had grown used to his presence, how much her mornings felt wrong without him there. She told herself there must be a normal reason. He overslept. Something came up. He got stuck in traffic, but the next day, he didn't show up again. Or the day after that. 3 days of silence made her doubt everything she thought they shared. Maybe she read too much into the smiles. Maybe the conversations meant more to her than to him. Maybe he watched her simply because he had nothing else to look at. The doubt hurt more than she expected. But on the 4th morning, just as she began packing her laptop with a heavy heart, the cafe door opened and there he was. Daniel walked in with the same quiet presence, but something was different. He looked pale, tired, almost troubled. His eyes scanned the room until they found her, and the relief that washed over his face was unmistakable. Emma felt her breath catch before she could even stand. He walked straight to her table. "Emma," he said, sounding breathless even though he wasn't rushing. "I didn't disappear on purpose." She looked at him, waiting, afraid to speak. He took a small step closer. I was trying to figure something out. Something important. And I didn't know how to come back until I understood it." Her pulse jumped. "Figure out what?" He swallowed, his voice lower now, almost vulnerable. "Something that might change everything between us. And I don't know how you'll feel when you hear it." Emma felt the world slow around them. Her hands went still. Her heart tightened. Everything she had wondered, everything she had feared, everything she had hoped, it was all hanging in the space between them. And for the first time, she realized Daniel wasn't just watching her. He was trying to decide what to do about the way he felt, and the answer was going to change everything. Emma stared at Daniel across the small cafe table. His eyes, usually calm and collected, held something new, an urgency, a vulnerability, a truth he was barely holding in. The weight of unspoken words hung between them like the quiet hum of the early morning. "I wasn't avoiding you," he said at last. His voice was steady, but there was a tremor of raw honesty in it. "I needed time. Time to figure out what I was feeling before I came back." Emma's chest tightened. She had spent days thinking about why he had disappeared. She had worried, wondered if she had misread him, if all the small smiles and glances had been nothing more than coincidence. But now, seeing him like this, she realized he had never stopped thinking about her either. Figuring out what? She asked softly, her voice low. She didn't want to sound accusatory. She wanted to hear him, truly hear him. "That I wasn't imagining this." Whatever this is between us, he admitted. He leaned forward slightly, elbows resting on the table, hands loosely clasped. I've been watching you for weeks, Emma, and at first I thought I just admired your focus, your presence. But the more I watched, the more I realized I was falling for you. And then I got scared. I didn't know how to handle it. Emma felt her heart beat faster. Falling for someone. That phrase made her chest tighten with both excitement and fear. She hadn't realized she had been hoping he would feel the same way. The mornings they had shared, the silent glances, the gentle conversations, it all suddenly made sense. He had been feeling the same pull, the same connection she had tried to ignore. You fell for me, she whispered, barely believing it. Yes, he said, his voice quiet but firm. And I didn't want to ruin it. I didn't want to scare you away or make things awkward. I just needed to be sure before I came back to you. Emma swallowed, trying to process the flood of emotions. Relief, happiness, nervousness, hope, they all mixed into a dizzying storm. For weeks, she had been watching him, noticing his small gestures, his thoughtful pauses. The way he smiled when he thought no one was looking. And now, finally, she understood why. It had all meant something, Daniel, she said, reaching out her hand slowly. He didn't move immediately, but when their fingers met, it was like a spark passed between them. Something warm, unspoken, a promise that neither of them had dared to say aloud until now. It used to be me watching you, he said after a long pause. Wanting to understand you, hoping I could figure you out without disturbing your world. But now I want you to see me. All of me. Emma felt tears prick her eyes, but she blinked them back. I want to see you, she said simply. All of you. For the first time, Daniel smiled fully. A smile that reached his eyes and softened every shadow she had ever sensed in him. He took a deep breath and began to open up in a way he never had before. He told her about his past, about the years he had spent feeling unnoticed and misunderstood, about the times he had longed for someone to see him for who he truly was, someone who could look past the surface. And then he told her about the mornings he had spent watching her, not in a predatory way, not in a possessive way, but in a way that felt almost reverent. He had seen her as someone with a story worth understanding, a life worth noticing, a soul worth cherishing. Emma listened, captivated. Every word, every pause, every glance between them deepened the connection she felt. She realized that this wasn't just attraction or infatuation. This was something deeper, a meeting of hearts that had both been cautious, both been waiting, both been quietly yearning without admitting it. After that conversation, they started spending more time together outside the cafe. Walks along the lakeside became their favorite ritual. They talked about everything. Childhood memories, failed relationships, favorite books, hopes for the future. With every step, every word, every laugh, the invisible barrier between them dissolved. Daniel no longer watched her from a distance. He engaged, participated, shared pieces of himself that were private and precious. One evening, as the sky turned a deep gold and pink over the lake, Daniel stopped mid-walk. He turned toward her, his expression serious but tender. Emma, he said, voice low, it used to be me watching you, wanting to understand you. But now it feels different. Now I feel like you're watching me too. And somehow that scares me more than I expected. Emma tilted her head, curious and gentle. Why would it scare you? Because when you look at me, he admitted, I feel like you see everything I've been trying to hide, everything I've been feeling, and it's overwhelming, but in a good way. Her heart swelled. That vulnerability, that honesty, made him even more real, more human, more magnetic. That's not something to fear, she said softly. It's something to trust. He looked at her for a long moment, searching her eyes for confirmation, for understanding, for a sign that she would stay. And then, slowly, he reached for her hand, not in a rush, not in desperation, but with careful, deliberate intent, as if this small touch was the answer he had been waiting for all along. Emma didn't hesitate. She intertwined her fingers with his, feeling the warmth, the steadiness, the silent reassurance. In that moment, it wasn't just about watching or being watched. It was about trust, connection, and mutual recognition. It was about two people seeing each other fully and deciding to step forward together as the evening light danced across the lake. They walked side by side, hands clasped, hearts racing but calm. They didn't need words for every thought. Sometimes a glance or a touch said enough. Every conversation, every shared laugh, every quiet pause became a thread in the delicate tapestry of their growing intimacy. Over the next few weeks, Daniel continued to open up, showing Emma parts of his life he had never shared with anyone. He introduced her to his favorite bookshop, the quiet trails he loved to walk when he needed peace, and the little traditions he kept to ground himself. Emma, in turn, let him into her world. She shared memories of her childhood in small-town Michigan, her dreams of traveling someday, and the moments of heartbreak that had made her cautious but resilient. It wasn't perfect. There were moments of doubt, moments of insecurity, moments when past heartbreaks whispered in their ears. But each time, they faced it together with honesty and patience. They learned to communicate not just with words but with gestures, glances, and presence. One crisp autumn afternoon, they sat on a bench overlooking the lake. The leaves were turning shades of amber and gold, swirling in the gentle wind. Daniel looked at Emma with a seriousness she had never seen before. "Emma," he began, "I used to think that watching someone from afar was enough. That admiring from a distance was safe. But it isn't. It never was. I want more than that. I want to share everything with you. Good, bad, everything in between." Emma felt tears prick her eyes again. The raw honesty of his words, the depth of his vulnerability, filled her with warmth and gratitude. "I want that too," she whispered. "I want it all with you." He smiled, the kind of smile that made her chest ache with affection and hope. And then, without thinking too much, they leaned toward each other. Not in a rush, not in a desperate need, but in a quiet, mutual acknowledgement of the bond they had formed. It was a simple gesture, yet it carried the weight of everything they had shared. The longing, the fear, the hope, the connection. From that day on, their relationship deepened. They were no longer just Emma and Daniel passing mornings in the cafe or exchanging glances. They were partners in a quiet adventure, exploring each other's hearts with patience and care. They learned the rhythms of each other's lives, the little quirks that made the other smile, the silent ways they communicated when words weren't necessary. One evening, as they walked along the lakeside trail, Daniel stopped and turned to her. The sky was painted in shades of purple and gold, the lake reflecting every hue. "Emma," he said softly, "I used to watch you because I wanted to understand you. But now I watch you because I want to be part of your world. And I hope you feel the same about me." Emma squeezed his hand, her heart full. "I do, Daniel. More than you know. And now I want to watch you too, not from afar, but as someone who shares your life, your heart, your world." He looked at her, eyes wide with emotion. And in that moment, everything shifted. The distance, the doubt, the fear, they all melted away. They didn't need promises or guarantees. They had each other. And that was enough to step forward together. The wind brushed their faces as they continued walking. Hand in hand, hearts beating in quiet harmony. The world felt full of possibility, full of light, and full of hope. Daniel wasn't just the man who had watched Emma from a distance. He was now the man she could watch, trust, and grow with. And Emma wasn't just the woman who had been observed. She was a partner, a confidant, and someone who could finally let herself feel the joy, excitement, and tenderness of being truly seen. And as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in its final, breathtaking colors, they both realized something profound. Sometimes waiting, watching, and trusting can lead to the most unexpected and beautiful beginnings. For the first time in a long while, both Emma and Daniel felt whole, seen, and ready for whatever came next together.